closer, breathe in the light. Morning hum in the garden high. Every wing has a story to tell. Every root knows how to heal. We listen, we learn, we gather and grow. We're the bees and the wild things know.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Attic Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Jody Schramm. Since June is one of the most popular months for weddings, I thought this would be the perfect time to explore a question, which is, what do bees have to do with marriage? At first glance, the answer might seem obvious. Bees make honey, and honey is sweet. Weddings are celebrations of love, and love is often described as sweet. End of story, right? Well, it turns out bees and weddings have been connected for centuries through folklore, mythology, literature, and tradition. In fact, many of the customs we associate with marriage today have roots that stretch back to ancient relationships between humans and honeybees. So today we're going to explore those connections, and along the way, I think you'll discover that bees may have more to teach us about partnership than we realize. So let's begin. And I want to start with a word we're all familiar with, and that's honeymoon. Most of us don't think about where that word came from. It's simply the vacation couples take after getting married. But the term itself has ancient roots connected directly to honey. For centuries, newly married couples in parts of Europe were given mead, an alcoholic beverage made from fermented honey. It's sort of like a honey wine. And the tradition was that the couple would drink mead for one entire lunar cycle, so one moon cycle, and that's following their wedding. The honey symbolized sweetness, abundance, fertility, and prosperity. The moon represented the month-long period after the ceremony. So that's how we got the word honeymoon. One of our most enduring wedding traditions traces directly back to the bees and their extraordinary gift of honey. Ancient people understood something that we still understand today. Honey is more than food. It's sort of a symbol. It represents nourishment, patience, abundance, and the transformation of many small efforts into something beautiful and extraordinary. That seems like a fitting metaphor for marriage itself. One of my favorite bee traditions comes from England and other parts of Europe, and it's called telling the bees. For centuries, families believed that bees were not simply livestock or insects, but they were members of the household. So because of this, major life events were shared with them, whether it was births, deaths, departures, or weddings. When a daughter of a family got married, someone would walk out to the hives and tell the bees the news. The bees were informed that a wedding had taken place and that the family structure had changed. In some regions, ribbons were tied around the hive. Sometimes a piece of wedding cake was offered near the hives for the bees to enjoy. Occasionally, ribbons from the bride's dress were attached to the hive as a symbolic gesture of connection. People believed that failing to tell the bees could bring misfortune. The bees might leave, or honey production might decline. The household was concerned that it would lose an important connection to good fortune. And of course, whether any of that is true really isn't the point. What's very cool to me is the worldview behind the tradition. People once understood themselves as living within a larger community of life. The bees mattered, the animals mattered. The natural world wasn't separate from human life. Instead, it was woven into it pretty intimately. And today, many of us have lost that sort of relationship with the natural world. But whenever I walk among beehives, I understand why people felt compelled to share important news with them. There's something deeply grounding about standing beside tens of thousands of living creatures engaged in purposeful work. You can't help but feel connected to something much larger than yourself. The custom of telling the bees might have faded into history if it hadn't been preserved through literature. In 1858, poet John Greenleaf Whittier wrote a poem called Telling the Bees. The poem tells the story of a widower informing his family hives of his wife's death. The bees become witnesses to his grief and the change and transition. What's remarkable is that the poem really isn't about the bees. It's about relationships. It's about loss. It's about our need to be seen and acknowledged during life's major transitions. And in that, the bees become symbols of continuity. Life continues, seasons continue, the hive continues. And somehow, so do we, as hard as that can be. The relationship between bees and marriage stretches even further back into mythology. The ancient Greeks associated bees with wisdom, devotion, fertility, and sacred feminine energy. Honey frequently appeared in wedding feasts and ceremonial offerings. Bees were often linked to divine messengers and to the mysteries of creation itself. In many ancient cultures, honey symbolized blessings. A marriage blessed with honey was expected to be fruitful and prosperous and enduring. It's easy to see why. Honey is one of the few foods on earth that humans have treasured across nearly every civilization. It stores well, it's nourishing, it's healing, and it's sweet. It requires remarkable cooperation to create. All of those qualities made it a natural symbol for marriage. As beekeepers, we know that many assumptions people have about bees aren't entirely accurate. Sometimes when people think of bees, they imagine a rigid hierarchy when they think about the queen and the worker bees as her subjects. And of course, that's not how it's really structured. What I see in a healthy colony is something I think much more interesting. I see cooperation, communication, adaptability. Every bee has a role, and these roles change over time. New worker bees begin their lives cleaning the cells of the hive. Later, they become nurse bees and they feed the young, the new brood. Later still, they are there to process the nectar to help convert it into honey. And eventually, they become the foragers, going out into the field and collecting the nectar and pollen. The colony succeeds not because every bee does the same thing, but because different bees contribute in different ways. And isn't that true in healthy relationships? The strongest partnerships are not built on sameness, they're built on complementary strengths. One partner might be highly organized while the other is super creative. One partner might be comfortable taking risks, and the other might provide a higher level of stability. I don't think the goal is ever to become identical. The goal really is to contribute your strengths toward a shared purpose, a shared life. And nature seems to understand this intuitively, or at least provide examples of it. But as humans, I think we sometimes need reminders of that. As I thought about this episode, I realized there are several striking similarities between building a marriage and building a hive. First, both require communication, effective communication. Bees communicate constantly through pheromones, touch, vibration, the waggle dance. Their survival as a colony depends on sharing information. Human relationships work almost the same way. Not that we are dependent on it for survival, but the relationship is. We share information, we express needs, clarifying misunderstandings, repairing conflicts, even dancing. The quality of communication often determines the quality of the relationship, and both partners have to participate for that to be effective. Second, both require resilience. Every colony faces challenges, whether that's through drought or storms or predators, disease, harsh winters. Healthy colonies can adapt. and healthy marriages do too. No relationship escapes hardship. And the goal is not to avoid difficulty because life can be difficult. We get thrown curveballs all the time. The goal then is developing the capacity to navigate those challenges together. Third, both require ongoing investment. A hive is not built in a single day, and neither is a marriage. Thousands of small actions accumulate over time, over a shared meal, a kind word, or a difficult conversation handled respectfully, expressions of gratitude. These are the things that the strongest relationships are often built on, from ordinary moments, repeated consistently and with kindness. Going back to the Victorian era, I think about how much Victorians loved symbolism. Flowers carried messages, the type and the color. Jewelry held hidden meanings. Even insects were assigned symbolic significance. Bees became very popular motifs in wedding art, embroidery, invitations, and jewelry because they represented faithfulness, industry, domestic happiness, and prosperity. A bee on a wedding gift wasn't just decorative, it actually communicated a wish for a productive, harmonious household. I love that idea. It's a small symbol carrying a much larger blessing, those well wishes from people who love the adoring couple. So, whether today you're married, partnered, single, divorced, widowed, or anywhere across the spectrum, I think bees offer wisdom that extends beyond romantic relationships. They remind us that healthy communities require participation, that communication matters, that interdependence is not a weakness, that we thrive through connection. And in our culture, independence is often celebrated above all else. But nature tells a different story, a more nuanced story. Nothing truly thrives alone. Even trees communicate through underground fungal networks. Pollinators depend on flowering plants, and those flowering plants depend on pollinators. Healthy ecosystems are built on healthy relationships, and so are human lives. I'd like to close with a modern adaptation of the old tradition of telling the bees. So this is a little bit of a beekeeper's wedding blessing. How about that? So imagine standing beside a hive after a wedding. The evening sun is low, the bees are returning from the fields, the air smells faintly of clover and summertime goodness. And you say to your bees, "Dear bees, today a new partnership has begun. May this home be filled with patience like yours. May it be rich with communication. May it know resilience through difficult seasons. May sweetness be found not only in celebrations, but in ordinary days. May this relationship grow as slowly and beautifully as honey itself." I think that's a blessing worth offering, and not just to newlyweds, but to all of us, because every meaningful relationship requires care. Every meaningful relationship benefits from patience. And every meaningful relationship becomes stronger when we remember that we are part of something larger than ourselves, just like the bees. Thanks for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, especially someone celebrating a wedding or an anniversary or an important relationship this season. You can put that wedding blessing into practice. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and as always, take a little time to step outside and notice the extraordinary lessons waiting for us in the natural world. Thanks for listening.
As the day settles back into green, let the quiet stay with you. Tend the small things, rest and remember. The hive is hum.